All right, everybody, we are live with the Combatcast as we get ready for big UFC 308 this weekend. But first, before we even get started with today's show, Chevy, let's talk about our sponsor.
Yes, we'd like to thank Game Up, our sponsor for the podcast. They make a thirst-quenching adult beverage with a special blend of electrolytes. Comes in 4 great flavors: fruit punch, orange, lemon, lime, and grape.
That's right, and it's only 110 calories. It's a low-carb drink, so you can just not feel guilty and enjoy some Game Up. And you can enjoy what we got coming up, which is...
All right, November 2nd, where I can't believe we're already heading towards November. UFC Fight Night, Moreno versus Albazi. That's at 8 p.m. card from Edmonton. And then November 9th, UFC Fight Night, Magny versus Prates. Tough matchup for your boy Neil Magny. The UFC only gives him hard fights now. 7 p.m. Apex card. And then November 16th, finally, UFC 309, Jones versus Miocic from MSG.
All right, and that's going to be huge. And also that weekend, too, of the Stipe Jones will be Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul boxing fight. Whether we roll our eyes or not, but that will be a big deal. And that is going to be – it's a big deal, too, because right now it's still scheduled. And it is going to be on Netflix. And
yeah,
so
we'll definitely be talking about that.
Yeah. So I'm interested at least just to see the numbers it kind of does and everything with Netflix. I think that's going to be a big thing with some of these, I'm sure UFC is even going to look at that, right? I mean, if you start seeing like what this could be doing on Netflix and you see these numbers, you're going to be like, oh, okay, maybe we need to get a UFC show on Netflix. With WWE already being, in bed, but have a deal with Netflix, hey?
Right, under the TKO banner, yeah.
Absolutely.
Which would be great because the ESPN Plus app is god awful. So,
yeah, and I think there's definitely a position there too that even though I would like definitely if they did like the WWE model, if all pay-per-views were just included in your subscription, they could do a thing with tiers where you could pay a little money, which would be the second best thing, or they could even keep the continued format where you get UFC content, but if you want the pay-per-views, you got to pay separately. I think, though, any of those deals, even the last one I said, which would be the least one I would like, would still probably be better than being on ESPN Plus because it would probably just be a better app to watch things on.
I literally only use ESPN Plus to watch UFC. So it's basically wasted money for me. I mean, that, and then I like to watch Little League Baseball, because the kids cry and stuff. But
yeah, I love that. People now know what Chevy's like. He's not always a nice man. That's all right, let's get into things while I'm trying to share stuff here. We had another thing go on this weekend. We had the PFL Battle of the Giants with the big story coming out. Francis Ngannou getting the W. Before we get into that and what we think might be next for Francis or what we want next for Francis, anything else you want to talk about on this card?
Yeah, further on down the card, Irishman Paul Hughes fought. He got a decision win over AJ McKee, and we know how great AJ McKee is. That's a very impressive win. He comes from Cage Warriors, and then he had one fight in Bellator, then fight in PFL. I'd love to see him make it over, fight some lightweights in the UFC at some point. He's still young. He looked great though, so shout out to him. Johnny Eblin won a super boring fight against Fabian Edwards. Terrible fight. But Cyborg got another belt. So I think she's won a belt in like every major MMA promotion other than one championship.
Strikeforce, I want to say. Strikeforce, Bellator, PFL.
She had the UFC belt at one point, right?
UFC, yeah. I mean, you name it. I mean, that is the most decorated female champion in MMA history. Obviously, Nunes had the double belt and was a 2-time bantamweight champ in the UFC. So, and she beat Cyborg, so she's going to be looked at as the GOAT. But if you're arguing other people, that's probably the next person that's going to be argued the most.
She's definitely done it for longer, super dominant from the beginning. I mean, from her second fight going forward, basically.
There are ways of looking at this. And the other two names that might pop up would be Gina Carano as a pioneer and Ronda Rousey would be the other pioneer who put MMA on the map. But I think when you look at not only good for women's MMA, but if you're just looking at overall success and accomplishments, you're looking at Nunes Cyborg. I mean, that's going to be the big comparison, I think, with, I wish it's kind of a bummer in a way that she left. I think it'd be fun to have watched those two fight again. I mean, he just knocked her out, but it was like they just Tommy Hearns Hagrid it and said, we're just going to bite down and go for it. And the end result was not good for Cyborg that night, but it would definitely be interesting. And I remember even, it might have been Clarissa Shields, I'm not sure, one of her boxing partners was mad at her because she said, you threw down all your technique.
Yeah, but, shout out to Cyborg. She's, like you said, a pioneer, great champion, 39 years old, winning a belt is tremendous at any weight class, but respect to her.
Absolutely. And of course, the big part of this segment is Francis Ngannou. He gets a huge win. He gets the finish. Emotional moment, talking about his son afterwards. Super happy for this guy because he should have won by all intents and purposes. But like we talked about going into this, he did 2 boxing fights and hasn't fought MMA in a while. The elements of, man, he could blow this were there. He didn't blow it. He did what he had to do. Good on him. Good on that moment. I hope he fights another MMA fight again. But if he is going to do a boxing fight, Deontay Wilder is the only boxing fight I'd really like to see with him right now.
Yeah. If it's going to be boxing, that's the only one I want to see too. If by some way or means John Jones wins this weekend and wants to avoid Tom Aspinall, or honestly wants just the money fight, and they can figure that out with Francis, that would be tremendous. I don't think that's happening, and I don't think the PFL really has too much else for Francis. I know he has a deal to build basically PFL versions of the PI, the UFC PI in Africa, and start developing talent there, because he says everyone that walks around looks like him there. So that's a terrifying prospect if you're an MMA fighter. But I know he's older, but he still looks so great. I think somewhere they got to find something for him.
Yeah, and don't be surprised too, as outlandish as this is. Don't be surprised with Jake Paul being part of the PFL if he's successful against Tyson and they do a boxing match with him and Francis. And if they ever were going to get Jake Paul to do an MMA fight with a name, as crazy as it sounds, I could see the deal with Francis being like, box you, but we got to do MMA. Would that all come together? I doubt the first one. I highly doubt the second part of that even more. But I'm just going to tell you, with Jake Paul being associated with the PFL and obviously it all being about money, and you're not working with the UFC, there's really only so many money matchups you can do. So I'm just saying, I would not be surprised if things are on the table in the future. But again, highly doubtful.
Jake is crazy, but he's not stupid. I don't see him ever getting in an octagon or a ring with that's life changing. Francis will change your life. He's only fought guys that are smaller than him, so I don't see him fighting Francis, who is much larger than he is. But that would make a lot of money. But Jake can make a lot of money doing a lot of anything else.
True. Well, all right. Let's just talk briefly about this past weekend's fight night. Hernandez Pereira. Anything else you want to shout out on this card as well, as far as what you saw this weekend in the co-main event?
Darren Elkins, Daniel Pineda had a great fight as expected. Pineda retired afterwards, so shout out to him. Had a great, very exciting career. That's about all going on. This card was a bit soft. So let's get right to this co-main event. Rob Font versus Kyler Phillips. I did not call this one right. I said that, Rob was probably a little too long in the tooth, looking like he was on the downturn. Kyler's an exciting prospect, looked poised and ready to take the next step. But too much too soon for him. Rob's still a beast. So he ended up getting a decision win, I believe. So bump in the road for Kyler. I think he'll still be back in, title contention not too far from now, but this was a bit humbling for him, I think.
Yeah, we split these picks, actually. I did pick Font. I thought that, but then I did not. Pereira Hernandez, kind of exactly how you called it. I mean, we'll go reverse. I'll talk about it a little bit first because this is the one fight I saw on the card. Michel Pereira actually came out crazy, like always. Looked good in that first round. Hernandez weathered that storm, and then even in round 2, there was moments where Pereira, I believe if I remember correctly, almost he had a choke on him for a little bit too. But once Hernandez got out of that, it was pretty much like Pereira had run out of gas and run out of ideas. Hernandez took him down, pressure for the rest of the fight, and then put a big stamp on it. TKO round 5, ground and pound, some elbows. I thought great win for Hernandez, especially when you consider, you talked about it last week, that Pereira, at least in my mind, quietly had kind of put together an 8-fight win streak. So Hernandez, who keeps racking them up here.
Yeah, I think Pereira needs a new camp and some goddamn cardio. Jesus Christ. I mean, his camp was in there and telling him just take a round off at one point to conserve energy. And then like in the 4th round or the 5th round, they were like, you just need one big shot. I'm like, how are you ever going to be champion with that kind of, instruction? So terrible coaching, I believe. I'm obviously not an MMA fighter, but from what I've seen and heard from many fights, that's terrible coaching. I don't understand how he even, it's just awful. So, find a new camp because he definitely has skills. But at this point, I know he had 8 wins in a row, but he runs out of gas so quickly. It was the end of the first round. He was already huffing and puffing. So, every guy knows they just need to make it through that first round and then they can wear him down. So, capoeira is all fun and games until, you can't breathe at the end of the first round. So
actually impressive that Pereira has put together the record he has, and not only in MMA but in UFC. So I think that he's an overachiever with that game plan as it is. So you're right. If you're gonna evolve and go to the next level, like let's maybe see your game evolve a little bit.
Yeah, I think he has so much potential that he's kind of wasting by not timing some of these things and just going out and blowing his wad immediately. So honestly, I think Fluffy probably should have finished him sooner. But Pierre he's a very tough guy. So he did what he could. He ended up getting the finish in the end. So shout out to Fluffy and better luck next time to Pierre.
All right, let's get to it. UFC 308, Topuria versus Max Holloway. I'm extra kind of excited for this weekend right now, just because, one, I love this fight. This is such a great fight stylistically. It's so many good X factors we'll get into, but also the 2:00 start time for the main card. This is like everything is perfect for this pay-per-view. But go ahead. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, super excited. 2 p.m. from Fight Island in Abu Dhabi. Couple prelim fights to keep an eye on. First of all, this card has a lot of great fights on it. So definitely worth watching the prelims. But shout out to Kennedy Nzechukwu versus our boy Chris Barnett, the little bowling ball guy that wheel kicked Gian Vellante that one time. That was great. And then Jeff Neal versus Rafael Dos Anjos is the featured bout on the prelim. So definitely keep an eye out for those ones. They're going to be some good fights.
Good opportunity for Jeff Neal. RDA is such a constant, he's such a constant, near the top guy.
I think he's been in the top 10 for 12 years or something like that, and multiple weight classes. So
do you think Jeff Neal gets it done? We'll just pick it.
Yeah, I think he does. I think his takedown defense is good enough, and on the feet, he's much faster and more powerful. Not grappling wise, but striking wise, his shots are more powerful. So I think I'm going to pick Jeff. I
think so too. I think he'll maybe even get a finish. Maybe. But RDA is so tough, it's hard to say.
He is tough, yeah. Let's get into this main card, though. Sharaputdin Magomedov, the pirate, the red-haired pirate, versus Armen Petrosyan.
All right, Petrosyan, 9-3, 6 KOs, 3 decisions, 3-2 in the UFC versus the pirate, 14-0, 11 KOs, 3 decisions, and he's 3-0 in the UFC. Oh, man, the pirate, he only fights in this part of the world, Saudi Arabia or Abu Dhabi.
Because he's got one eye. So he can't get sanctioned anywhere else.
And I think there might be some holes in this game. We've talked about this before, but I don't think we're going to see it yet. I think this fight is picked specifically, just looking at these two, for him to get the win. I don't know if he'll get the finish. That's my only question. But I will say second round KO, but we'll see.
Yeah, Petrosyan's going to kickbox with Sharaputdin, and I don't think that's a good idea for anyone at middleweight outside of maybe Izzy. So I'm going to assume we see Shara style on him a little bit and then ends up finishing him. So I'll say TKO round 3.
Okay.
Let's move on from a very striking heavy fight to what could potentially be very grappling heavy. Magomed Ankalaev versus Aleksander Rakic. This is probably a title eliminator fight.
Very, very possibly. Rakic is, I bet they want him to beat Magomedov.
I do.
Yeah, me too, actually. Rakic is 14-4, 9 KOs, 1 sub, 4 decision. He is on a 2-fight losing streak right now, but we're talking Blachowicz and the former champion, right? The heck?
Oh, yeah. Petroska, or what's his name?
Yeah,
Yuri Petroska. Yeah, Prohaska.
So only until it's 2 losses were very tough competition. So we still see.
And he was coming back from that knee injury from those fights as well. So,
but man, Magomed Ankalaev, 18-1-1-1, 10 KOs, 8 decisions. He's 10-1-1 in the UFC. Performance of the night 4 times. I mean, other than a draw and a no contest, which was, I think it was a legal knee early in the fight with Johnny Walker, who he came back and stopped. I mean, the only time he's lost was in his UFC debut. I talk about it all the time because it's very noteworthy. Was to Paul Craig, and it was basically to get submitted with 1 second left. So we're talking about as close to an undefeated fighter as you can be, not named John Jones. So I would have to say I'm not pulling for him, but I would still consider him the favorite to win here by decision.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Rakic, and he sure needs a win, like you were saying. I'm hoping with his back against the wall, he finds another level. But like you said, Ankalaev is almost unbeaten. So he had that last second loss where it was, I believe, a triangle choke, and he didn't go unconscious. He just tapped out. So clearly just didn't know how much time was left because he didn't go out. He could have just held on for another second and stayed conscious and won that fight. But, and then obviously the draw with Jan, which was super boring. 2 guys basically nullified each other grappling. So, he's pretty much dominated everyone else. So, I have to pick him. Probably similar to the Jan fight. I mean, Ankalaev can strike and will entertain it a little bit, but as soon as he sees an opening, he'll take Rakic down, and he'll probably just hold him down for the whole fight. So I'm going to pick Ankalaev by decision. All right, let's move on. Lerone Murphy versus Dan Ige.
Ige coming off an exciting fight that he was not successful in, but he took on basically hours notice because he was in the area UFC. So we all love Dan Ige for that. He's 18-8 overall, 6 KOs, 5 subs, 7 decisions. Performance of the night like 4 times. He's an exciting fighter. Lerone Murphy, though, 14-0-1, undefeated, 7 KOs, 7 decisions, 6-0-1 in the UFC. His first UFC fight was a split draw, and he's won every fight since then. I'm going to say Lerone Murphy's going to get this done probably by decision. Although, again, it's kind of like the last fight. I'm kind of rooting for Ige. It'd be more of a feel-good decision, feel-good moment if he wins, but I just can't favor that at the moment.
Yeah, the UFC is like, hey, Dan, thanks for stepping in on like 1 hour's notice. Your reward is flying across the world to fight this super tough, relatively unknown, undefeated fighter.
Yeah.
So thanks a lot. Enjoy that. Dan should have a wrestling advantage, but Murphy has developed like outstanding takedown defense. He's like, I see him with a similar style to like Leon Edwards, where he's just a tremendous kickboxer, very patient on the feet, and has great takedown defense. A little bit more active than Leon Edwards, maybe less dangerous, but I still think, that being said, he can cause Dan some problems on the feet. Definitely more technical, if not more powerful, for sure. So I think I'm going to pick Murphy by decision, but I'm pulling for Ige as well. I don't dislike Leon Murphy. I just think Ige is getting a raw deal.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'd like to see Ige get promoted a little bit and maybe some favorable matchmaking. UFC does not like to do that, but it's not like they never do it. But
yeah, that's true. Yeah. Speaking of which, some jump in the queue. Robert Whitaker versus Khamzat Chimaev.
All right, Chimaev, we know he's had his struggles with health issues and everything the last couple of years. Struggle making weight, struggle getting to the fight. But we still have to look at this guy's record. He's 13-0, 6 KOs, 5 subs, 2 decisions, 7-0 in the UFC, performance of the night 4 times, and 1 fight of the night against Gilbert Burns. So he's not, nobody's had the answer to him yet, although we have seen cases where we're like, if this could have gone a little longer. So enter Robert Whitaker, 26-7, 10 KOs, 5 subs, 11 decisions. He's won 3 out of his last 5. His only 2 losses were to Stylebender and DDP. So basically, the former champion and the guy who was about to be champion. Let's see. Former middleweight champ. Fight of the night 5 times, performance of the night 4 times, Ultimate Fighter smash winner. He's a winner. He's a guy that knows how to win. And now, as for the other guys on this card who I said I'd like to see win, but I didn't think they were probably going to do it, I'm going the opposite here. Now, not that I don't see Chimaev capable of stopping Whitaker, and he's a beast, but Whitaker has survived before. He's very durable. He's very tough, and he's a guy that can get in there. The only concern I would have here is almost in typical Chimaev fashion, that if he starts off fast and starts to slow down, it is only a 3-round fight. So I almost wish this was a 5-round fight. But I'm going to say Whitaker's going to find a way to do it, and I think he's going to pull off. I might even say it. I'm going to go balls to the wall, whatever. I'm going to say Whitaker finishes him in round 3. He's going to turn it around. Chimaev's going to get gassed, and Whitaker will pull off the finish. I won't be surprised if Chimaev finishes him either or just wins the fight, but I'm going to go with Whitaker.
Yeah. Khamzat has lost his aura for me at the minute, for sure. I'm still not convinced that he makes it to the octagon, but if he does, if he makes it there and he goes in and he dismantles Robert Whitaker the way that he beat some other guys, I'm back on the Khamzat bandwagon for sure. But the only other middleweight that real middleweight he's beat is Gerald Mearshart, who he caught in like the first 20 seconds of the fight. He punched him unconscious. And then his other middleweight fight, he fought, Usman, and if that was a 5-round fight, a lot of people think he would have lost.
Usman was taking that on short notice and has fought most of his career at welterweight.
Right. So, plus this fight was already matched up. So Bobby Knuckles already had a training camp preparing for Khamzat, and then he got a second one. So, and you spoke to the durability of Robert Whitaker. Yes, he did get knocked out by DDP, who is huge and massive. But Robert Whitaker, not that long ago, went 10 rounds with Yoel Romero.
Mhm.
So he has the most durability.
Experience of getting out of those dangerous situations. Not that this is necessarily a compliment sometimes because he's been in near almost finish, but he has survived a lot of times.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know this about Robert Whitaker, but he was an alternate, or he attempted to be on the Australian Olympic wrestling team, but he was part of the UFC, and they said no, they shut it down because they were worried he might get hurt, in the Olympics. So he can wrestle. Now, is it to the level of Khamzat? Probably not, but he has all that experience in MMA. Is his wrestling defense good enough to nullify it and tire Khamzat out? I think so. So that's what I think he's going to do. A lot of wrestling defense. I bet he does get taken down, but he works his way up. And when he's on the feet, I think he's in and out. He can make Khamzat miss and punish him. So I think he tires him out. I think it's going to be a close fight, but I'm going to pick Robert Whitaker by decision.
All
right. Let's talk about the main fight, the big fight. Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway.
Ilia Topuria, what can you say? 15-0, 5 KOs, 8 subs, 2 decisions, performance of the night 3 times, fight of night once, and the current featherweight champ. Undefeated featherweight champ. Pretty impressive. But let's talk about his opponent, the current BMF champ here, former featherweight champion himself, Max Holloway. 26-7, 12 KOs, 2 subs, 12 decisions. He had 3 successful title defenses. He has the highest significant strike differential in UFC championship history. The most title fight
by a lot. The
What's
differential, his differential is massive compared to the number 2 guy.
Yes, it's incredible. He has the most successful title fight wins in UFC featherweight division history. This guy is he's got so much. Fight of the night 7 times. This is just an all action, all exciting fighter with a granite chin who has won championships, and he's still one of the best going today. He's a great matchup. I think they're going to probably box. And if you're boxing Max Holloway, it's a dangerous game. But if anyone could put him out right now, it probably could be Topuria at featherweight because he's got lethal boxing. He's knocked some people out. And I would say Max is getting bigger. Max is a professional, but he's getting bigger. So I would imagine the weight cuts are maybe a little more difficult for him. It's going to be a real close competitive fight. It could go any way. It's hard to go against Ilia because he is the undefeated featherweight champ. Probably picking with my heart, but I picked with my heart, and I also had an explanation the last time when a lot of people said Justin Gaethje was going to knock out Max Holloway. Until I see somebody put Holloway out, I don't see it happening. And if you're going to box with this guy, I think that backfires on you. Now, maybe once we get there, we're going to see a different game from Ilia. We're going to see more leg kicks, takedowns, and he'll get a decision. But I don't know. I'm going to go Holloway right now. I say he rides that train, and I hope if he does win the title, even though it's a little unorthodox and we always want our champs to defend it, I hope he goes from BMF title to featherweight title, and I hope they give him a shot at Islam or whoever the champ is at that time.
So Ilia is a tremendous fighter, albeit a very annoying champion. Talks a lot of shit. I think I talked about this last week. Used to be quite a fan of the guy. Can't stand him at all. He's my second least favorite champion now, behind John Jones. We all know what a big fan of John Jones I am. But Ilia is tremendous. He's great everywhere, with particular emphasis on his power punching. Max did get dropped for the first time in his career in his last fight with Gaethje. So that score 1 point for Justin Gaethje there.
Right.
You could say Ilia does everything in the cage as well, if not better than Max. But Max He's just a true fighter, and he finds a way to win all in every situation. So he also thrives off people challenging his skills. People were talking about who the best boxer in UFC was. Max was dodging punches versus Cater while yelling that he's the greatest boxer in the UFC, making him miss while not even looking at him. And then
Brian Ortega how to throw a punch while he's punching.
Teaching Brian Ortega how to throw a punch. Everyone was so worried about him fighting Justin Gaethje and worried about his power and everything, and then Max ends up dismantling him and knocking him out. So in the last 10 years at featherweight, he's only lost to Volkanovski. Close fights. You could say just stylistically, matchup-wise, not a great matchup. So I could not be more biased. Obviously, Max is my favorite fighter. He's my guy, but I'm picking Max. So I'm going to pick him by 4th round TKO. I think that Ilia comes out strong, touches Max a few times, hits a lot of leg kicks. Max makes some adjustments, starts touching Ilia back. Ilia goes for takedowns. Max scrambles up. Ilia starts to tire out. And because he's undefeated and hasn't taken a loss and hasn't been really down hard at all, Max breaks him and then ends up TKOing him. So round 4 TKO, Max bless Holloway. Let's go.
All right. You heard it here first. We're both picking Max. I said decision. Chevy says 4-1 KO. I'm going to change my thing a little bit. I'm going to go 5th round TKO. So I'm not going to piggyback off you, but I will say a late finish too. Volume punches. All right, guys. UFC 308 is going to be amazing. Check it out this weekend. Tune in back here for the Combatcast. And actually, Chevy, tell me what we got coming up one more time.
November 2nd, UFC Fight Night, Morano versus Albazi. Happy to see Brendan Moreno back. And then tough fight, though. And then November 9th, UFC Fight Night, Neil Magny versus Carlos Prates. Tough fight for Neil Magny. And then November 16th, UFC 309, John Jones versus Miocic. Stipe, please do me this one favor. And we'll also talk about Mike Tyson and Jake Paul.
Well, all right, guys. Tune in to UFC 308 this weekend and enjoy some Game Up.
If you haven't tried Game Up, then you are missing out. Imagine your favorite seltzer and your favorite sports drink had a baby, but it's way better than that. Each can is 110 calories, low carb, 4.9 ABV. It's a nice light drink that is not light on flavor. Game Up comes in fruit punch, orange, lemon, lime, and grape. Pick it up at drinkgameup.com or at your nearest liquor.